I used to think that more sleep meant more energy and more recovery. So what I used to do is I would go to bed and set my alarm 8 hours from the time I go into bed. As I've done my sleep research, I've realized that is probably the worst thing you can possibly do because you put pressure on your sleep and you also aren't going to be consistent because you don't sleep straight away, right? So I realized that sleep quality isn't how long you sleep, it's actually the timing and consistency of your sleep. And so everything changed once I started to treat sleep like a habit. So before we jump into tips and tricks and what you should do, let's talk about the path of least resistance. So you've come back home from a long day at work or a long day of lectures and you're tired. So what do? You want to escape from reality a little bit, right? Nothing too deep. You just want to have your own time. So what you do, you scroll, I don't know, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you scroll, right? Then you go onto Netflix, you watch a series, cool. The series is banging, you're happy, cool, happy days. But what you're doing here is you're not having your free time anymore. It's actually encroaching into when you actually go to bed. So you wake up the next day and you're miserable. You're tired. How can you sleep and still be tired, right? And we call this revenge bedtime procrastination, which is when you continuously push your bedtime back as a result of you wanting me time. Revenge bedtime procrastination is a term that comes from Dr. Aditi Naruka, who is a Harvard stress expert. So based off this, my assumption is that we know how to get better sleep. It's not that we have a lack of knowledge or information. It's more so we struggle with the tension of our free time and our bedtime. So I want to reframe sleep. Sleep isn't a byproduct of being tired, because if that was the case, sleep would be so easy, right? You just come home, you just lie down and boom, you're chilling. But growing up, that's how we frame it. We think sleep is you go to bed, you close your eyes, and sleep will come. But as you get older, you realize sleep is really interlinked with our days. When you drink coffee, your exposure to screens, and there's so many different factors at play. So realistically, my suggestion is that we should probably structure our days with sleep front and center. Not front of mind, so you're not thinking of it 24/7, but you should really plan your day in accordance with your bedtime, and you should have a reason for that. And you probably hear that and you're thinking, that's a bit extreme, Sleep is important, but why am I planning around it? Well, sleep actually changes you. What do I mean by that? So, when you wake up and you're tired, you're groggy, you probably will avoid risk taking. You will avoid the things that you need to do but feel risky. And as a result of that, you also need to realize that your brain catches up to your reality. So if you're constantly avoiding risk as a result of you feeling tired or not feeling capable of attending to a task, not only does that affect the material things such as how much you progress or what you do on that task, it's also a confirmation of your identity. And aside from that, apart from this individualistic side, you also have impact on your mood, your energy, and your emotional reactivity. You become more annoyed, more on edge, irritative. And sometimes that's actually not you, right? That's just you being in this state of being tired. And you probably don't like it, let's be honest. So that's why sleep should be front and center of your planning. So this is where I introduce the habit equation. The habit equation is Q plus routine plus reward, all in brackets, and outside the brackets is repetition. And this is really important for this story that I have within my own journey of improving my sleep. Because in 2024, I had a New Year's resolution. And we know they don't work, but just stay with me. I was in first year of university trying to figure myself out, alright? So I said to myself, I want to get better sleep, longer sleep in particular. And what I did, I got an alarm clock, I was disciplined for the first few months, and I made some changes, right? I actually got interested in how I can improve my sleep. But then life got in the way, and exam season comes in as well, and it's like, cool, it was a fun ride, but now it's over. But I learned something from that. And during that period, I actually did some research into habits. So then going into 2025, I tried to repurpose my personal habits a couple of times, and I realized sleep is actually just any other habit. I'm trying to overcomplicate it by trying to get like a sleep mask, trying to look at nose strips and all these different methods, right? Water-filled beds, curved pillows, all of these things. But at the core of it, sleep is just another habit. So what I did, I ended up improving my sleep by making it consistent. And this is really important because in 2024, I said I want to improve my sleep. But what I needed to do was make systems to make it inevitable. And it's so much easier to do the former. And what I ended up doing was tending to the latter. But this is a silent battle that many of us face. It's not easy. And so I invited a sleep performance coach to share his experience. So, Chester, why should someone bother to do the research and invest in their sleep?
The main reasons like someone should actually invest in their sleep is because people invest in gym memberships, right? They invest in exercise, they invest in eating healthily, and the reason they do that is because they know they'll feel better. Their bodies will look better, they will feel more confident, more comfortable, be more productive, more focused. And sleep is the exact same thing. I would actually argue sleep is the most important layer when it comes to that, right? Sleep helps your body to recover. Sleep helps your mind to focus appropriately. So the reason that you should focus on sleep is really because it's an investment in your health. It's an investment in the future version of yourself to stop you from getting things like dementia. And it's also an investment in yourself right now to make sure that you can wake up and actually feel alert, productive, and just live the most fulfilled, best life that you can because you're not dragging your feet, powering through the day on 5 coffees.
I want a more fulfilled and energetic life. So what did I do? I actually invested time into my sleep and linked it with this habit equation. And the first thing I invested in, not necessarily monetarily, but with my time, is the Q in that equation. The Q in my case is dimming the lights. It's very, very simple, but it's actually so crucial and impactful when it comes to your bedtime. Because what you're doing is you're preparing your body to sleep. You're signaling to your body it's time to sleep. And this affects your melatonin production, which is your sleepy hormone. And what this means is you can get into a state of restfulness. You become more relaxed and you're prepared to sleep. So second of that equation is routine. And for me, this means eating earlier than I was before. And this isn't only because, the recommended time is 3 hours before bed or whatnot. It's more so for comfort. It's a more practical thing because when you eat just before bed and the food is sloshing around your belly, it's not pleasant. So I made that change and it's made a massive difference because not only are you more comfortable, you also wake up feeling more rested, more energized, and more recovered. I used to be that person who used to eat half an hour before bed, and that only increases your heart rate, spikes your insulin, increases your blood pressure. It's not great. It doesn't impact your sleep very well. So I used to also wake up at random times, like 4 a.m. sometimes, your alarm is 6 a.m. You're looking at your alarm clock like this. And you're like, oh, I've had a great sleep. And you look at it, it's just like, my body's let me down. I'm waking up 3 hours before my alarm clock, right? So apart from that, there's also knock-on effects, because if you eat earlier, you can afford to have a slower evening and also afford to have the cues to then prepare for sleep. Because if you haven't eaten and you're hungry, you're not going to eat in the dark. So there's no point dimming the lights, right? But underlying this habit formation is our relationship with stress. And so I asked Chester, what is a common trend you see with founders and business owners? And through the coaching of business owners and founders, what is a common trend you've seen and what can we learn from it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the identity, right? It's the feeling like they're never doing enough, and the feeling that they always need to work hard, and their mind's racing and they're never switching off. But then you look back and you realize, okay, like you've actually felt pretty tired in the mornings and you've been relying on like 3 coffees before 10 a.m. And when it gets to 9, 10 p.m., you can't switch off and your mind is racing, you're waking up frequently in the night. Okay, well, you're overstimulated, okay? And your body is in a state where it's struggling to relax and recover and perform at its best because you're at such a heightened state 24/7 because your identity is work, work, work.
So this relates to something that I struggle with, which is a racing mind. And essentially, I'll be in bed, my brain is still going, it's planning 2027, and it's like you can't stop it. And I've realized that in order to counteract it, it's really as simple as just slowing your body down just before sleep. You can't sleep any other way. Everything needs to slow down. And in order to do this, my final cue before bed is breathwork and something called the breath of fire, which is something that I will link in the description because I've written a post about it and managing the racing mind. But essentially, I was introduced to this concept of breath of fire because all the way back in like year 10, when I was playing Sunday League football, I wanted to learn how to breathe more efficiently. To an outsider, that might sound absolutely crazy. It's just like, just breathe, man. What are we talking about? But because I wanted to learn how to breathe more efficiently through the nose and making that more natural, I looked at these videos from Will John, who is a football YouTuber. From watching these videos, I realized how relaxing this breathwork is. So I applied it to my sleep routine, and it's something that I've never stopped since. So on the topic of football and breathwork, I also looked into exercise and sleep, and I saw that morning exercise actually improves the time that it takes to fall asleep and improves our sleep quality. And personally, I prefer to exercise in the morning, not because of research or whatever, more so because it gives me momentum. When I do exercise, I just want to keep going and going and going. So it gives me a second wind to just keep going after maybe a bit of studying or a bit of work, and then I'm ready to go again. On the other hand, when it comes to evening exercise, it is also impactful. Exercise is exercise, but it does increase the length that you sleep. It improves your ability to not wake up during the night, but the only thing it does damage is your REM sleep. And your REM sleep is really important because that is where you have memory consolidation. That is where you connect the dots between all the things you learned the previous day. So personally, to me, that shows that morning exercise is probably the best way to go about it. And it's not all bad doing evening exercise, but for me, as a person who's studying day in, day out, I do prefer to have that morning boost and also have the ability to have a long, deep sleep with good REM sleep. So to round this off, sleep is really just a mirror of your priorities, your lifestyle, and your relationship with stress. Because in order to improve your sleep quality, you have to undergo some voluntary hardship. It doesn't mean you have to climb a mountain to end up getting better sleep. It's really just being disciplined in how you approach it, but also knowing that you won't have the answer straight away. And that uncertainty is really uncomfortable, but it is necessary when experimenting for better ways to do something. So if you made it to the end of this video, I would say to reflect on one cue or routine that you can change today to improve your sleep quality. Comment 100% and the key takeaway you got from this video. Until next time, I will see you in the next video.